2,500 years ago, a Greek philosopher sat down and basically solved anxiety. Not metaphorically, he wrote a specific practical system for it. His students used it, Roman emperors used it, and then somehow we forgot about it for 15 centuries. But that's not even the weird part. The weird part is that when modern psychologists finally reinvented his techniques in the 1960s, they worked clinically in controlled trials. We now call it cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's the gold standard treatment for depression and anxiety. So today we're going back, way back to find out how the ancient Greeks actually thought about mental health. Not the watered down philosophy class version, but the real, practical, surprisingly modern stuff. Picture this. It's the middle of the night. You're lying in bed, and your brain is doing that thing it does. The thing where it pulls up every embarrassing memory from 2014, cross references it with your current problems, and projects a slideshow of worst case futures directly onto the inside of your skull. You're not sick, you're not in danger, but your heart rate says otherwise. Now, you do what any modern person does. You reach for your phone, you scroll, you watch a video of a raccoon falling off a trampoline. You feel slightly better for 12 seconds, then worse. Eventually, you fall asleep at 4 a.m. having solved absolutely nothing. Here's what's interesting. The ancient Greeks had nights like this too. They didn't have raccoon videos, but they had anxiety, grief, shame, regret, loss, the full human package. And some very smart people among them decided we should figure out what's actually happening here. And maybe, just maybe, we should do something about it. Let's start with Socrates, who famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Now, people usually quote that as a vague philosophical bumper sticker, but let's actually think about what he meant. Imagine your brain as a kitchen. Over the years, you've shoved stuff in there: habits, beliefs, fears, things your parents told you, things an ex said once that you definitely still don't think about. None of it was organized. Half of it's spoiled, but you keep cooking with it because it's there. Socrates is saying, go look in the kitchen. Not because it's fun. It's not. There's definitely a mystery container in the back, but because you cannot fix a problem you refuse to examine. His method was dialogue, not therapy in our modern sense, but close. He would ask people questions until they discovered contradictions in their own thinking. The goal wasn't to make them feel better immediately. It was to make them think clearly. And he believed, and this is the key insight, that most human suffering comes not from bad events, but from confused thinking about events. It's not what happens to you, it's what you believe about what happens to you. That idea, that's still the foundation of modern psychotherapy, literally. Now let's fast forward about 150 years to a group called the Stoics. They came from Athens but spread everywhere. They had a framework so clean, so elegantly simple, that honestly, I'm annoyed it took me until my 30s to encounter it. They called it the dichotomy of control, and it goes like this. Take everything in your life, everything. Your job, your health, your reputation, your relationship, the weather, the traffic, what people think of you, whether your flight is delayed, whether someone laughs at your joke. Now sort it into two piles. Pile 1, things you control. Your own thoughts, your own choices, your own effort, your own responses. That's basically it. Pile 2, everything else. The Stoic insight, and this is Epictetus, who was actually a slave when he developed this, is that human misery almost always comes from treating pile 2 like it belongs in pile 1. We suffer not because bad things happen, but because we believe bad things shouldn't happen. We get attached to outcomes we cannot guarantee. And then when reality doesn't cooperate, which it won't because reality is famously indifferent, we experience it as a kind of violence. Epictetus's prescription was simple. Before you react to anything, ask, is this in my control? If yes, engage. If no, practice letting go. Not pretending it doesn't matter, not toxic positivity, just releasing the grip. Modern psychologists call this locus of control. Decades of research show that people with an internal locus of control, meaning they focus on what they can change, have measurably better mental health outcomes. Lower anxiety, less depression, greater resilience. The Stoics figured this out in approximately 300 BC with no fMRI machines. Here's the one that genuinely surprises people. The ancient Greeks invented theater, and they did not invent it just for entertainment. They invented it as a mental health intervention. Here's how it worked. Once or twice a year, the entire city of Athens, and I mean the entire city, rich and poor, farmers and politicians, would gather in an enormous outdoor amphitheater. They would watch tragedies, stories of war, loss, betrayal, grief, fate, stories where terrible things happened to people who didn't deserve it. And they would cry together, publicly, for hours. Aristotle had a name for what this produced: catharsis, from the Greek word for purging or cleansing. The idea was that by watching fictional suffering, you could safely process real emotions that were stuck inside you. You could feel grief without being destroyed by it. You could experience fear at a manageable distance. The Athenians understood something we're only now getting clinical data on: that suppressed emotions don't disappear. They accumulate. They come back as anxiety, irritability, numbness, overreaction. The prescription wasn't be rational or just push through it. It was go to the theater, feel something, let it move through you. Modern trauma therapists use almost identical logic. EMDR, expressive arts therapy, narrative therapy, they all work on the same principle. You have to process an emotion to release it. The Greeks just did it collectively with better costumes. Okay, so we've got 3 ancient tools. Let's make them real. Tool 1, the examined question from Socrates. When you're anxious or spiraling, don't just feel the feeling, interrogate it. Ask, what exactly am I believing right now? Is that belief actually true? What evidence do I have? You don't need a philosopher. You don't need a therapist. You just need a journal in 10 minutes. Write down the thought, then write down the evidence for and against it. Most anxious thoughts, when you force them into words, turn out to be considerably flimsier than they felt in the dark at 2 a.m. Tool 2, the 2-pile sort. When something goes wrong, before you react, do a 30-second stoic audit. What part of this can I actually affect? Focus your energy there. Everything else, you can notice, you can grieve, but you stop fighting it. You stop arguing with reality. This is not apathy. The Stoics were deeply engaged with the world. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire. Epictetus counseled thousands. The dichotomy of control isn't about caring less. It's about caring strategically. Tool 3, scheduled catharsis. The Greeks formalized emotional release. We're supposed to stumble into it. Instead, deliberately make space for it. Watch a film that makes you cry. Go to live theater or live music. Keep a grief journal. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. The goal is not to perform emotion, it's to stop blocking it. These aren't mystical, these aren't complicated. They are, honestly, kind of embarrassingly simple. Here's the thing that sticks with me about all this. We live in an era of unprecedented access to mental health information. More books, more apps, more podcasts, more therapy modalities than any humans have ever had. And rates of anxiety and depression are, depending on which study you read, either the same or worse than they've ever been. The ancient Greeks didn't have more answers than us, but they had something we sometimes lose: the belief that the mind was worth tending, that psychological health was a civic virtue, not a private weakness, that you could think about how to think and it would change how you lived. Socrates examined his assumptions. Epictetus sorted what he could and couldn't control. Aristotle went to the theater and cried. None of these required a prescription, a diagnosis, or an algorithm. They required attention, practice, and honesty. 2,500 years later, that still turns out to be most of the job. If you found this useful, the ancient Greeks would tell you to examine why you found it useful, and then go tell someone else. That's basically what Socrates did for 30 years, until the city of Athens got tired of it and made him drink hemlock. So, maybe just hit subscribe.